The sun blazed down on the dusty street of Willow Creek, a quaint town nestled in the rolling hills of Georgia. Jane, a librarian with a penchant for quiet afternoons and the scent of old books, stepped out of her library into the sweltering heat, her eyes adjusting to the stark contrast of light and shadow. The town was a patchwork of familiar faces and well-worn brick buildings, a place where the whispers of the past could almost be heard echoing through the oak trees that lined the sidewalks. It was in the midst of this mundane routine that a peculiar figure caught her eye, a man with a charming French accent and a sketchbook, his eyes scanning the buildings with an intensity that suggested he saw more than the naked eye could perceive. His name was Henri, an architect from Paris, here to study the town's unique blend of colonial and modern architecture. He had arrived only a week prior and had already become a topic of interest among the locals. Their first encounter was nothing short of serendipitous. Jane, her curiosity piqued, approached him as he sat under the shade of the town's oldest oak, his hand sketching a detailed blueprint of the courthouse. "You seem to have quite an eye for detail," she said, her voice soft yet firm. He looked up, squinting through the glare, and offered a warm smile. "In my line of work, it is essential," he replied, his eyes lighting up with a passion that was as foreign to her as his accent. Over the following days, they met regularly, Henri sharing tales of the grandeur of Parisian buildings while Jane whispered secrets of Willow Creek's storied past. They bonded over shared values of preservation and the art of storytelling, each one's enthusiasm fueling the other's. Their conversations grew deeper, and soon, so did their feelings. The town's gossip mill churned with whispers of a burgeoning romance between the local librarian and the mysterious Frenchman. Jane found herself eagerly awaiting their meetings, her heart fluttering at the thought of his smile. She would often wear her favorite sundress, the one that complemented her auburn hair and brought a sparkle to her hazel eyes, hoping to catch his gaze. He, in turn, would arrive with a bouquet of wildflowers, plucked from the fields that surrounded the town, placing them gently in her hand with a nod that spoke volumes. Their afternoons grew longer, stretching into the warm embrace of the evenings as they strolled along the banks of the Willow River. Jane felt a kinship with Henri that she hadn't experienced before, a bond that transcended the confines of her well-organized bookshelves. His stories of soaring cathedrals and bustling boulevards painted vivid pictures in her mind, making her yearn for a world beyond the town's horizon. Meanwhile, Henri found in Jane a tranquility that the city had long ago stolen from him, her gentle guidance through the town's history a balm to his restless spirit. One evening, as the sun dipped below the tree-line, casting a golden glow across the river, Henri took a deep breath and turned to Jane. "Jane," he began, his voice a gentle rumble, "I have a confession to make." He paused, his thumb tracing the lines of her palm. "I didn't come to Willow Creek merely for research. I was searching for something more, for someone like you." Jane's heart skipped a beat. She had felt the connection deepening between them but had never dared to hope it was more than friendship. "What do you mean?" she asked, her eyes searching his. "I read about your town in an old book," Henri confessed, his eyes earnest. It spoke of a librarian with a heart full of stories and a soul as timeless as the building she cared for. "I had to see if it was true." He paused, his gaze lingering on her face. "And it is. You, Jane, are the muse I've been seeking, the inspiration that has been missing from my work." Jane's cheeks flushed with a mix of surprise and delight. "But what does that mean for us?" she murmured, her voice barely audible over the whisper of the river. "It means," Henri said, taking both of her hands in his, "that I've fallen in love with you. And I believe you feel the same." Jane's eyes widened, and she took a step back, the warmth of his touch still resonating in her palms. "Love? But you barely know me," she protested, even as her heart swelled with a feeling she hadn't known in years. "Perhaps that is true," Henri conceded, his smile never wavering, "but I know enough to recognize when I found something extraordinary. And you, ma chère, are that and more." Jane searched his eyes, finding an honesty that both calmed and electrified her. She had felt the pull of his presence from the moment they met, but love? It was a word she had not allowed herself to think in the context of this whirlwind friendship. Yet, as she looked into the depths of his blue eyes, she knew he was right. Her heart had been captured by the charming Frenchman and his world of grandeur and wonder. I think I do, she stammered, her voice shaking with the weight of her confession. Henry's smile grew, and he stepped closer, his hand reaching up to brush a stray strand of hair from her flushed cheek. You do? He asked, hope coloring his voice. Jane nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her like a wildfire, consuming any doubt that had lingered. I do, she said more firmly, her voice gaining strength. I've never felt this way about anyone before. They stood there, the river's gentle murmur the only sound between them, until Henri leaned in, his breath warm against her skin, and kissed her. It was a kiss filled with promise, a declaration that seemed to echo through the very air. Jane melted into him, her arms wrapping around his waist as they swayed together, lost in a moment that felt as eternal as the town's storied past. Their relationship grew steadily, like a well-tended garden. They shared laughter and long discussions into the night, their conversations ranging from the intricacies of structural design to the subtleties of their favorite authors. Jane found herself falling more deeply for Henri with each passing day, his passion for architecture mirroring her love for the written word. One morning, as the dew glistened on the leaves of the town's historic square, Henri presented Jane with a gift, a set of detailed blueprints for a library addition that harmonized seamlessly with her beloved building. It's a symbol of what we could build together, he said, his eyes shining with excitement. A place where the past meets the future, where stories old and new come to life. Jane studied the blueprints, her heart swelling with pride. The design was elegant, a perfect blend of Willow Creek's storied charm and the avant-garde flair of French architecture. It was a testament to Henry's understanding of her and the town she cherished. It's beautiful, she whispered, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. Merci, Henri said, his own eyes misty. It is for you, and for us. A place where our two worlds can intertwine. Jane looked up at him, her eyes sparkling with hope. Our worlds? Oui, Henri nodded, taking her hand. I have been offered a position back in Paris, a chance to restore some of its most iconic structures. But I cannot leave without knowing if you will join me, if you will be the keystone in this grand design of a life together. The gravity of his proposal settled over Jane like a soft blanket, both comforting and suffocating. Paris, a city of lights, art, and endless stories. Could she leave the familiar comfort of Willow Creek? The thought sent a tremor through her, yet she knew the answer lay in the warmth of Henry's hand and the boundless dreams reflected in his eyes. For days, the blueprints lay untouched on her kitchen table, a silent reminder of the choice before her. The townsfolk watched with bated breath, their whispers carrying on the wind as they speculated about the future of their librarian. Jane felt torn, her heart a battleground for the comfort of the known and the allure of the unknown. The town's mayor called a meeting, eager to secure Henry's talents for Willow Creek. Jane sat in the packed town hall, her stomach in knots, as Henri presented his vision for the library. His passion was infectious, the room alive with excitement, yet her thoughts remained tangled in a web of doubt and longing. As the applause for Henry's presentation died down, the mayor turned to her. Jane, my dear, what say you to this magnificent proposal? Her gaze met Henry's, and she felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the faces of her friends, her neighbors, her life in Willow Creek. I need some time, she finally managed to say, her voice trembling. The room fell silent, the tension palpable. The mayor nodded, his expression understanding. Take all the time you need, dear. We're in no hurry to let our town's treasure slip away. The townsfolk murmured in agreement, their eyes on Jane with a mix of anticipation and concern. Days turned into weeks as Jane weighed her decision. She found herself wandering the aisles of the library, her fingertips brushing against the spines of books she knew so well, as if seeking counsel from the very pages that had whispered their wisdom to her over the years. She felt the comfort of Willow Creek's embrace, the warmth of her friends, and the quiet joy of her solitary life. Yet, when she closed her eyes, she saw the grandeur of Paris, the gleaming Eiffel Tower, and Henry's smile, a smile that promised adventure and love in equal measure. Then, without warning, a letter arrived from Paris. It was postmarked from a prestigious architectural firm, and it bore the name of Claude Durand, a rival of Henry's from their college days. The town buzzed with speculation as Claude strutted through the streets, his own sketchbook in hand, scrutinizing every building with a critical eye. His presence was like a storm cloud looming over their peaceful haven. Jane's heart sank as she watched Claude charm the townsfolk with his suave manner and grandiose ideas. He spoke of modernity and innovation, casting Henry's design as outdated and unsophisticated. His proposal was sleek, a stark contrast to Henry's elegant blend of old and new. It was as if he had stepped out of a glossy magazine, promising to transform Willow Creek into a modern marvel. Jane felt torn. Henry's vision was rooted in the town's heritage, a love letter to its storied past, while Claude's was a siren's call to the future, beckoning with the promise of something shiny and new. Her mind raced with the implications of each choice, staying in the comfort of Willow Creek or embracing the unknown with Henri in Paris. After weeks of contemplation, her decision came to her as she sat in the quiet sanctuary of the library, surrounded by the whispers of countless tales that had shaped her world. She knew that life was not merely about preserving the past but also about creating new stories. And what could be more exciting than to write her own love story in the very pages of the City of Light? With a tremble in her hand, she penned a letter to Henri, her words filled with hope and a declaration of her love. She watched as he read it, his eyes lighting up with joy, and she knew she had made the right choice. They would build a life together in Paris, a place where the old met the new, much like their own unlikely romance. The day of their departure was bittersweet. The townsfolk gathered at the train station, their faces a tableau of sadness and excitement for the journey ahead. Jane hugged her friends tightly, feeling the weight of their love and the warmth of their well wishes. As the train pulled away, the town grew smaller and smaller until it was nothing but a speck on the horizon, a cherished memory in her heart. Paris greeted them with open arms, a whirlwind of culture, art, and romance that seemed to mirror their own love story. They found a cozy apartment in the 5th arrondissement, nestled between the majestic Sorbonne and the bustling boulevards of Saint-Michel. The scent of fresh baguettes and blooming flowers wafted through their windows, mingling with the distant sound of accordions. Their days were filled with new adventures as they explored the city's hidden gems, the secret gardens, the cobblestone streets of Montmartre, and the whispered stories of the Louvre's hallowed halls. Jane's eyes widened with each step she took, the grandeur of the French capital a stark contrast to the quiet comfort of Willow Creek. Yet, amidst the chaos, she found a strange sense of belonging, her heart swelling with the rhythm of the city's heartbeat.